12 years ago, I moved from Singapore to Vietnam. Since then, I've lived in 6 different locations across 4 countries, made friends from all over the world, found my soulmate, got married, and 2 years ago we retired in Bali. I remember how naive and unprepared I was 12 years ago when I took the plunge. 12 years in, I don't have any regrets. It's been overall a fantastic life. I would do it again in a heartbeat if the clock turned back. But it's definitely had its opportunity costs and challenges. Since a lot more people these days are also considering relocating to a place offering a higher quality of life for lower living costs, geo arbitrage, in other words, I thought I'll put out there today the uncomfortable truths about settling or retiring overseas and the potential loneliness that it can encompass. I hope you'll find it helpful to consider these before you finalize your move abroad permanently. If you're planning your move, let me know in the comments down below where you're headed. Is it Thailand, maybe? Mexico, that's another popular one. Vietnam, or Bali even. And let me know what you may be concerned or worried about, whether it's addressed in this video or not. Anyway, let's dive right in. Uncomfortable truth number 1. You may say goodbye eventually to precious friendships. So a lot of these breakdown videos out there, those people have been away from home, say like 3 years or 5 years, and then they're all like, yeah, if the friendship is real, it's gonna survive the distance. You keep in touch via messaging, video calls, you catch up when you're back home. It's almost like you never left. And for the early years, I will say this is actually mostly true. The good time friends fell away quickly once I moved. Those friendships that survived the distance were exactly the ones I expected. For most of us, these deep connections, they don't number more than a handful. But the truth is, being abroad unfortunately means a hard stop to most meaningful growth of these friendships. You're physically not around anymore to make new memories together with these friends. All you really have left to rely on is the currency of your old memories and what you already went through together in the past. And unfortunately, at the 12-year mark, I have to say, close friendships are a lot more faded these days. They're still my precious friends, but with the relentless march of time and so much happening so fast at this stage of life, we've just all grown in different directions. There's less commonality these days to bond over. And, other friendships of theirs have grown in my absence. So it's very sad, and for me, this was an unforeseen cost to the wonderful life I have built overseas. The early years just kind of lulled me to thinking like, piece of cake, friends forever. But realistically, my choosing to sail a different course by 1 degree initially has with years just turned into this big gulf. I don't mean to depress you all, I just want you to understand the inevitable eventual opportunity costs. When I finally realized this had happened, I grieved some of these friendships for quite a while, but now I try to view them from the Buddhist perspective of unattachment. We come into this life with nothing and we will leave the same way. I'll always be grateful for the times we shared, for the wonderful friendships I was so lucky to experience. And now I will be content that even though our paths have diverged, we're all leading good lives. I never think, however, that I should have chosen not to move abroad though, had I known that these relationships would eventually be sacrificed. Life is ever-changing and too uncertain. Even if I had not moved away, other factors too could have caused those friendships to end for other reasons. Uncomfortable truth number 2. Cross-cultural relationships can be the loneliest. A lot of people who move abroad, they end up dating cross-culturally and they find themselves in international relationships. Sometimes it's not just cross-cultural, maybe you also come from very different financial backgrounds as well. And then add to that the bit where you may not be fluent in the same languages. Meaningful communication as a couple has never had so many barriers. But we'll all end up doing it. You do it just for fun because you're excited about your new environment and the new social circles. It's also usually not a bad thing, right? You always definitely grow as a person as you interact with new people and you go through new experiences. But say you end up becoming more committed and it turns into a longer term thing. As the honeymoon phase of every relationship wears off, lots of things start becoming more apparent. Stuff like both of you were socialized in different worlds, so literally for every single thing, you'll have a different frame of reference. You'll perceive the same event differently because of the different cultural and financial contexts that flavor the way you process stuff in life. Basically, you might end up feeling lonely within your relationship because your significant other doesn't understand everything that you've experienced in your life and how that has shaped how you view the world and relate to everything now. I've gone through this myself a few times, and my own conclusion finally was that life is infinitely easier if you pick a partner who shares similar values to you. It means figuring out stuff like, are you a champion of individuality, or do you prize community and family over the self? And then what about your partner? Do you believe in charity and social aid, or do you believe it's every man for himself? Dogs or cats? Are you a spender or a saver? Are you a YOLO fan, or do you prefer long-term planning? All of this stuff, you guys gotta match up. It's all basic fundamental values that underpin how you live your life wherever you are. It's a lot of pain and hassle figuring out all this stuff, but for the right guy or girl, you know, it's worth it. Before we move on, a big thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. So Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes for everyone and anyone who loves learning. If 2023 is the year you promised yourself you're gonna finally explore new career or side hustle options or work on personal growth, Skillshare is the perfect place to start. For me, one of the ways we have fun in retirement is making YouTube videos. And when we first started, Skillshare was where we learned so many of the basics like videography, storytelling, and more. Till today, one of the best classes I ever sat through online anywhere is still the class by Sorel Amori, YouTube Success, Build an Authentic Channel That's Worth the Follow. Her advice about finding your niche, valuing authenticity over beauty, and creating meaningful messages and providing value to the audience just really changed our perspectives on what we were making back then. So we've gone from like 40 subs to 154,000 plus subs of today. And still from time to time, I refer back to Sorel's worksheet when I'm creating my videos, just to check that I'm still on track for making something good for our people. It's always super easy to take whatever you learn on Skillshare and apply it directly to your life pursuits, whatever that may be. I highly recommend checking out Skillshare using my link in the description below. The first 1,000 people will get 1 month of Skillshare absolutely free. You can try it out, learn something new, move a step closer to your 2023 goals. Uncomfortable truth number 3. You need to be the kind of person that's okay not comprehending 100% what's happening around you. Are you? Living in a place where you don't speak the local language, obviously you won't be able to chat easily to most locals around you. You know, stuff like literature, road and public signs, the radio, TV, etc. It's all incomprehensible. And the laws, culture, history of the place, it also becomes way more elusive, at least until you start picking up some of the local lingo. Some people actually, they don't react too well to this, being immersed in an environment where they do not understand most of what is going on around them. They find themselves in a language isolation chamber, so to speak. They start feeling socially isolated, disconnected, excluded, lonely. It's especially awkward and embarrassing in social settings where you are expected to interact, like at dinners with other people, for example. And then you either feel very incompetent because you can't keep up, or very guilty if the nice people around you start to forgo the fluidity of their native tongue to speak in English just to include you. On the flip side though, it really boils down to your personality. For me, all these years everywhere, most of the time I kind of feel like I'm in what I call this blissful ignorance zone. It's a cozy and comfortable bubble where your train of thought is completely uninterrupted by the noise and the world around you. You move through that noise, you're surrounded by it, but you're not part of it. I actually identify as a highly sensitive person, so too much stimuli in my environment actually becomes really stressful. And I'm an introvert, you know, not the type to go around talking to strangers. So being in this bubble most of the time is actually a bit of a relief. even so, after a while, when you finally meet people with whom you can speak completely effortlessly, inevitably there's that pleasure of communication and expression. I think it's a basic human need. Obviously, the way out of this is to sit down and learn the local lingo. But not everyone will take the time, money, and effort to do so, and even if you do, in my experience, and I do speak 5 different languages, various levels of fluency, of course, but still. You know, the spoken language is often very different from your textbook lessons. There's slang, local expressions, and whatnot. So you can gain fluency with time, but very rarely true currency. This is also probably why expat gatherings are so popular. But yeah, you know, you want to consider this factor versus your personality before you pack up and go. Uncomfortable truth number 4. Back home, you actually might become an imposter. So most of us doing the abroad thing will still make trips back home now and then. And you may not notice this at first, but with time, the feeling does set in that when you're back home, you're just pretending to be like everyone else, really. It's the inevitable consequence of being out there, experiencing so much different stuff and adventures, and being in this completely different frame of mind compared to the people who never left home in the first place, who's sat in the same routine they've had for the last 10, 20, 30 years, and whose attention is on stuff like, you know, the latest domestic political scandal or tax changes. Living abroad for extended period changes you inside significantly, not in a bad way, but it can end up with you feeling like a fish out of water when you're back home. And that can be quite jarring. There's also this weird thing when you are home and you meet up with your old friends, and surprisingly, no one's really asking in detail about what you've been up to abroad. They're all just pretty busy with their own universe already, you know, that's where their main attention is. And if you kind of expected to be sharing tales of your exploits abroad, it can be quite disappointing for some to find that reaction from their friends and family back home. Just manage your expectations and you'll be alright. And that feeling of not being able to really fit in anymore when you're back home, it's also okay. Ultimately, think about it. Life is organic and full of change. Whilst you're abroad, things at home, the lives of your friends and family, they also still keep on developing. You just have to, like, you know, come to terms with this and accept this. After all, you have a new home now somewhere overseas, and you're only back there as a transient visitor. Life has changed for you too. What do you think, folks? Agree? Disagree? Maybe you have some smart strategies for dealing with the discomfort and loneliness? Do tell me more in the comments below. Thanks always for tuning in. I really appreciate you all sharing in my thoughts through these videos. Wherever you are, have a happy, awesome weekend. Let's chat again next week. Bye!